Okay, at this point, I would like you to introduce you to my colleague Valentina. Valentina, if you would like to start the presentation.
Sure, thank you, Hannes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Patient Engagement Open Forum session. This session will be focused on diversity, inclusion, and equity in patient engagement. Next slide, please. So I will be presenting this session together with Jen Horonjeff. A quick introduction about myself, and then I will hand over to Jen to introduce herself. I'm Valentina Strammiello. I'm the head of programs at the European Patients Forum. I've been working at EPF for roughly 8 years. I'm in charge for projects at EPF as well as health technology assessment. Jen, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Horonjeff. I'm the founder and CEO of Savvy Cooperative. Savvy is a patient-owned co-op. We're based here in the United States, but we work worldwide. And I'm a patient myself, first and foremost. And prior to starting Savvy, I was a human factors engineer and patient-centered outcomes researcher. So I'm so excited to be able to talk about all these things patient engagement. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jen. We can now move to the next slide. Maybe many of you are already very familiar with the Patient Engagement Open Forum, but I'd like to share some quick information about this initiative, which is an initiative bringing together the European Patients Forum with the patient-focused medicine development and the UPATI. And we all together are running virtual events, and this is ongoing at least for 2021. What we want to do is really work together in a multi-stakeholder context towards stronger patient engagement. The forum aims to provide a holistic perspective of patient engagement, the landscape and actors, and foster collaboration and co-creation while breaking down the fragmentations that are often present in patient engagement work. Next slide, please. So some housekeeping rules before we get started. Many of you are already familiar with those rules, having been involved in so many online events. So what we would like from you is to be present and engaged in the conversation. Please keep a microphone muted unless you want to raise your hand and speak in front of the audience. Also provide your questions, comments, and feedback in the chat. Don't forget that this session will be recorded. And last but not least, let's make this workshop an interesting one together. Next one, please. Another point we would like to share is that this is an open workshop that is held virtually. All questions will be shown with the name of the person who asked. So just as you could comment live in a live meeting, be respectful to each other as you would do in a live meeting. Unfortunately, if we have a lot of participants in the room, we want to be able to answer live all of the questions. So we will do our best during the moderation to be as inclusive as we can. Next one, please. So this is a very quick introduction of the agenda for today. We will be together till 6 p.m. Brussels time. After this quick introduction, I will give the floor to Liz Barr and Murray Penner from ATAC, a US-based organization focusing on HIV. And their session will focus on diversity and access, lessons learned from AIDS Treatment Activist Coalition. This will be a very to the point presentation, really bringing the results from the research they have conducted. This will be followed by breakout sessions that will be introduced by Jen. We will move on to the breakout sessions themselves, where we'll hear different stories, each breakout session one story. And after those stories, we will have 2 interactive sessions looking at challenges and afterwards approaches and solutions to those challenges. After the interactive session 2, we will move back to the plenary, where we will share the outcomes of our conversations and come to an end of the discussions at 6 p.m. And now I would like to give the floor to Liz Barr and Murray Penner for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Murray Penner. Liz Barr, unfortunately, is having a delay with a medical appointment, and unless she comes on, I will be doing this brief presentation. But we are very honored to be able to talk to you today about a study and project that we have done with the AIDS Treatment Activist Coalition. I am the president of the board of directors for AIDS Treatment Activist Coalition. And let's go to the next slide, please. This is us. We are a US-based treatment activist coalition. Many of us are living with HIV. We are working together to advance research and obviously working to end the HIV epidemic. We are a small group of dedicated activists, and we have no staff. So all that we do is volunteer. And we are very excited that this year we were able to conduct a study of the diversity of a bunch of trials from 2010 to 2020. So next slide, please. With this diversity report, you can see on this slide, and it's a little bit busy, but we analyzed publicly available information for the 4 pharmaceutical companies who are active in HIV research and development: Gilead, Janssen, ViiV Healthcare, and well, it's J&J, Janssen, ViiV Healthcare, and why am I just blank on the 4th company? That's embarrassing. Anyway, I'll skip that and come back to it because it shows up. But we analyzed the 4 companies. Race and ethnicity data were really not consistently reported throughout the trial data. Locations were also not reported, and in many cases were entirely absent from the registry entries completely. We did see some very good data. In particular, ViiV Healthcare was at the top of the list in terms of their transparency. We believe from this report that improved data sharing and transparency might improve community engagement and trust of the pharmaceutical companies. But basically, we did see that there was suboptimal reporting of all the metrics for all the companies. And you can see the website there where you can access the report. There was a lot of data that was not publicly available, and so we had to make some assumptions there. Next slide, please. So if you look at the average, we took the averages for all companies, for Gilead, Janssen, Merck, and ViiV, and we just averaged out what the participants who were reported would be. And you can see here that all of them were white males in the US and around the age range of 40 years old. And so clearly, you know, that is not the population that we are serving throughout the US and the world. And so we know that both geographic distribution of the reported trial participants, as well as their race, ethnicity, and their gender were inconsistently reported, and therefore this is what it looks like. It is a concern to us. We have been meeting with the companies to talk about this for many, many years. We have seen some improvements, but this report demonstrates that we have a long ways to go in terms of diversity of trial participants. Next slide, please. So we did learn some very important lessons, and I think I've already mentioned those, but data-informed conversations about diversity and inclusion were obviously welcomed by the companies. They appreciated the conversation. Some of them were probably a little bit more defensive about the conversation, and had a lot of reasons why they either didn't report data or why they were having trouble with recruitment. Nonetheless, we had very good conversations with the companies. Our methodology was easily replicated and really is a starting point for advocacy groups to have these conversations, and not only in HIV, but in other disease states as well. And I have to give props to Liz Barr, who was our lead researcher on this. I'm really sorry that she could not be on the call today to actually present to you as well. But we can certainly be in dialogue if any of you have questions about this over time. So our requests to the companies were really about improving their data transparency and obviously their diversity. So we have requested each company to do that, and we will be monitoring this on a regular basis. So hopefully annually we will review this again, and we'd like to encourage companies that as we continue to have this dialogue, they can be the example and the leaders in terms of improving their diversity in clinical trials. We really do hope that it reflects increased diversity as well as trust in the pharmaceutical companies. Clearly, gender, race, and geographic distribution are the main areas where we are looking at diversity, but we're also interested in making sure that the age ranges are diverse as well. As we see more and more people living with HIV and aging, we would like to see, more and more older people that are also in trials, particularly for medications that may benefit them. So we continue to really help move this forward with companies in terms of our conversation, and we really hope you will take a look at these reports, or this report. It is available, again, as I said, on our website, and we are just thrilled to be able to share this with you today. I believe that's our final slide. So thank you for the opportunity to just put this in front of you, and I appreciate the conversation here.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much for that, for setting the stage for some of the important reasons why we need to be thinking about diversity and inclusion when it comes to participation in clinical trials, but also beyond, thinking about all the different ways that we can be connecting and working with diverse patients in the clinical innovation process. And so now what we're going to do is go into these breakout rooms where you're going to have the opportunity to be interactive with your colleagues and peers and people that you don't know. So next slide, please, as we show kind of the different breakouts that we're going to be exploring. So we're going to break into 3 different groups. And here you're going to hear first and foremost from 3 patients that are able to share their experiences with you all. And I really invite you to take the opportunity to absorb the various things that they're sharing, because you're going to use this throughout your time in those breakout sessions. In those breakout sessions, after we hear from the patients, there's going to be 2 more interactive opportunities. One is going to help you focus in on some of the challenges and risks that we know that the industry is facing when it comes to actually doing the patient engagement work that we know you all so want to do. So it's a time to have an open and honest conversation about what those things are. After that, then we're going to be switching gears a little bit and talking about, okay, so what do we do about that? How can we create an action plan so that you all can leave here armed with different ideas and opportunities to take back to your own work, to think about how you can co-create and collaborate more seamlessly with patients. So before we break off, just to introduce the different sort of topics that will be discussed in these 3 breakout rooms. Group 1 will be with me over at Savvy Cooperative, and we're going to be talking about trust and access to healthcare in Indigenous communities, and be focusing in on some examples from COVID-19 clinical trials. In group 2, we're going to be talking about access to hepatitis C treatment. And in group 3, it's going to be talking about MS diagnoses in those teenage and adolescent years. So 3 different topics, but all wonderful sort of scenarios and opportunities to think about the need for diversity and inclusion. So with that, we will be bringing people into your breakout rooms that you'll be assigned to, and then afterwards at the very end, you'll come back here as a group to close out the session. Enjoy, have fun with your colleagues.
Thank you, Jen. Everybody should have gotten an invitation to a breakout room. Please join these now. Our colleague Chiara will stay here in the main room in case anybody gets lost or anybody joins later and can then still be assigned to any of the waiting rooms. And I will go and join Valentina now.
All right, as people are heading back over, I want to thank everybody for being part of today's session and for jumping in. And, in our session, we noticed that people kind of, were wanting to maybe just hear more about some of these concepts and ideas, and certainly from our patient who shared a wonderful story and more insights with us. So, it's always great to hear kind of what people want out of these types of sessions. And so, I'll turn this back over to Valentina too, to be able to share a little bit about what she took away from her session, as well as Tomasz in his session, to sort of share some of those learnings. From us, I think we ended up just having a dialogue that was more around, some of the things that people were trying around how to engage patients in the community, be it from, working with local communities, barber shops. Tawnya, who shared in our session, who was our patient story, was telling about kind of the experiences they had on the reservation, and that it's really important to go work with the health centers on the reservation. So we started to talk about that, as well as some of the modalities to collect patient insights. Is it something that is happening in a virtual space now? And how do we make sure that that is accessible for everybody? And, acknowledging the bias that might be there, but trying to put in the work to make sure we can engage patients. So Tomasz, I'll throw this over to you to give a little bit of a recap on what you heard in your session.
Sure. So it was a bit bumpy because we were moved in and out the breakout room, but so that kind of disrupted the conversation. But actually, there was some really good insight actually about how diversity is a much broader concept than just racial diversity or geographic diversity, so that it also includes, and especially in Europe, it must include socio-economic diversity as well. So we have to think about poor people who don't have access to technology for whatever reason, and that they also can get into a disadvantaged situation, and linguistic diversity, because again, we take it for granted that we speak in English, we work in English and stuff, but I mean, the patient, especially the farther east you go in Europe, so if you go to Central Europe or to Eastern Europe, people don't speak English automatically. So that's another challenge that we need to actively think about. Someone pointed out on the basis of my story, the challenges with the inclusion of LGBTI communities, which remains a challenge. But that also leads on to thinking more about the inclusion of women. So this challenge remains. The underrepresentation of women in science and in clinical trials, and in general, this is a major issue. So access to information. Someone mentioned the implicit bias in healthcare, which is another excellent viewpoint. And in terms of solutions, we came to the conclusion that peer help would be important. However, while we expect patient organizations, peer organizations, to do more, we should also fund them more and better, and in a sustainable way, because it doesn't make sense to expect from them to undertake more tasks, but not help them with the delivery of those tasks. And then in terms of some additional proposals, especially for the industry, that it should be made easier for the patients to access clinical trials and other services and initiatives. Also that the internal cultural knowledge and awareness within the members of the industry should be improved. And one interesting comment applicable to both pharmaceutical but also medical devices manufacturers was that there should be more possibilities for them internally to speak with patients and not just hear from patients, but actually to build a real dialogue.
Great. Valentina, do you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Jen. So the story we shared in our breakout session was about Donna. Donna was diagnosed with MS when she was 17. And what is specific about Donna's story is also that she comes from a Punjabi family living in UK. And of course, any information about ELF couldn't be shared in Punjabi language directly. So Donna had the additional burden, not only of dealing with their own diagnosis, but also having to translate the news to her mother and involve her also in the management of her condition. So she had to face this additional burden. In our group, we have discussed several aspects, and of course, because of this specific story, we didn't only look at the involvement of younger people in the design of healthcare systems to make sure that they address the needs of this specific target population, but we ended up looking also at the cultural barriers that may be also an additional issues for people who are trying to access care or an early diagnosis. One of the points that was raised was that probably one of the challenges to having more inclusive approaches in patient engagement is that there is a fear not to do the right thing. And the reason might be found in the fact that probably there are not yet very robust methodologies to allow for more diverse approaches. And so even those who are willing to do so don't identify yet the right methods to do it in an appropriate way. But looking at maybe the potential solutions or enablers for more inclusive approaches, we have identified health literacy, and it was recognized by a couple of participants as one of the aspects that probably has seen some improvements globally thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. Which allowed for more people to learn more about health issues and how to better self-manage certain conditions or be better aware of what's going on. And so maybe we can build on this boost of more health literate people globally. Last but not least, also looking back at Donna's story and the fact that she felt a bit lonely and isolated, the role that social media can play. This is a tool that are naturally used by young people, and maybe this is something that can be better used also to connect young patients to their peers. And this is in a nutshell from our side. I think we are heading towards the end. And can you move to the next slide, please? So we would like you to share your feedback with us. You can scan this QR code, and also we are sharing a link in the chat for you to share your thoughts with us. And we hope you enjoy this session, and we look forward to the next meeting that will take place in October. Next slide, please. So the next sessions will take place on the 6th and 7th of October after the summer break. And so we wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your contributions. Thank you very much.